It's a calm afternoon, the kind that carries the warmth of the sun and the peaceful sounds of everyday life. But in an instant, everything changes. A racist cop, fueled by anger and prejudice, strikes MiKe Tyson in the face, unaware that he's just challenged the world's toughest boxer. What begins as an abuse of power quickly escalates into a confrontation that will test not only Tyson's patience and strength, but also the cop's arrogance. As tensions rise and the world watches, justice takes an unforgettable turn. In the stillness of the early morning, MiKe Tyson walks through the town like a panther, stealthy, yet with a raw, undeniable power. The rising sun casts a golden hue across the landscape, transforming the world into a peaceful masterpiece. The chirping of birds and the laughter of children fills the air, creating a serene soundtrack to Tyson's journey. Tyson, with a look of quiet contemplation, moves through the streets unnoticed by the townspeople, embracing the tranquility. His destination? A youth center, where disadvantaged kids find hope, strength, and inspiration through his presence. The golden light of the rising sun bathes the town in warmth, while the sounds of birds singing and children's laughter fill the air. Tyson moves through the streets, his face serene, gliding through the town like someone at peace with the world. His presence goes unnoticed by the bustling townspeople as he soaks in the tranquility around him. His destination? A youth center he supports, a safe haven where children facing hardship find solace, hope, and inspiration in his presence. As Tyson approaches the entrance, a youth mentor in his late 40s, a kind and warm man, steps forward. With a genuine smile, he greets Tyson, his voice filled with gratitude. "Mike, these kids absolutely adore you. Every time you visit, it leaves a lasting impact. They draw strength from you, and your story gives them hope." "Your story. We can never thank you enough," the mentor says, his voice full of appreciation. Tyson's face softens, touched by the heartfelt gratitude. He places a gentle hand on the mentor's shoulder, nodding in humble acknowledgement. The love and admiration in the room are almost tangible, radiating through the air like a warm embrace. Tyson, a true beacon of inspiration, sits among the group of eager youngsters. His towering figure stands in contrast to his gentle demeanor, his presence commanding yet kind. As his rich, powerful voice fills the room, the children listen in complete silence, hanging on every word. Tyson speaks of his struggles, his perseverance, and the discipline that carried him through the toughest battles of his life. His words weave a tale of grit and resilience, captivating the children, who sit spellbound, drawn in by the wisdom he imparts. One young boy, Jamal, slowly raises his hand, his voice barely audible as he speaks up. The room holds its breath, waiting for what comes next. Jamal, with a hesitant hand raised, seeks Tyson's attention. His voice, barely a whisper, trembles as he opens up about his struggle with bullying. Tyson's expression changes in an instant. What was once the face of a fierce fighter softens, becoming more paternal. He leans in, his eyes full of warmth yet laced with determination. Tyson gently places a fatherly hand on Jamal's shoulder. The warmth of his touch seems to speak volumes. Words unspoken, yet deeply understood, offering the boy all the support he could ever need. In a voice strong, yet filled with empathy, Tyson speaks with the kind of wisdom that only comes from experience. "Jamal, strength isn't about how hard you hit. It's about how much you can take and keep moving forward. When life knocks you down, you get back up. Never stay down. When you're scared, you face your fears. I believe in you, Jamal." Meanwhile, Across town, a much darker scene is unfolding. Officer Ryan Walsh, flanked by his partner, drives through the neighborhood streets in his squad car. The tension in the air is thick, heavy, and palpable, like the quiet before a storm. Walsh, notorious for his heavy-handed tactics and thinly veiled prejudice, stares out the window with an intensity that speaks volumes. His gaze is cold, unforgiving, and it's clear that his mind is clouded with judgment. Sitting beside him in the passenger seat, his partner shifts uncomfortably, clearly disturbed by Walsh's harsh attitude. His silence speaks louder than words, an unspoken acknowledgement of the growing divide between them. The tension in the car continues to build, thick and suffocating, as the partner remains silent, his eyes still fixed on the passing scenery. Finally, unable to stay quiet any longer, he speaks up, his tone cautious, yet filled with a hint of pleading. "Walsh, maybe you could ease up on people today. Not everyone's a criminal, you know." The words hang in the air, heavy with uncertainty. The impact of his plea remains unclear. Walsh's jaw tightens in anger, and without warning, he shoots a seething glare at his partner. The contempt in his eyes is unmistakable. His lips curl into a sneer, a twisted, venomous smile that barely hides his hatred. His voice drips with disdain as he replies, his words like a slap in the face. "You don't get respect by being soft. These people need to know their place." "You don't get respect by being soft, you hear me?" Walsh snarls, his voice sharp and bitter. "These people need to know their place. If you go soft on them, they'll walk all over you." He spits the last words out with venom, his gaze once again shifting to the streets outside the window, as though the world beyond him holds all the answers. His partner, now silenced by Walsh's unyielding hostility, shakes his head slowly, a quiet surrender in his defeat. Outside, the golden rays of the afternoon sun catch the windows of a nearby diner, casting a warm glow over the bustling scene. The scent of freshly brewed coffee and earthy dishes fills the air, offering a brief moment of comfort. Inside, Tyson enters the diner. His movements are smooth and powerful, every step radiating the sheer strength and grace of a world-class athlete. The diners, mid-conversation, fall silent the moment they see him. Their whispers of admiration quickly turn into a hushed, respectful awe. The lively chatter of the diner, once full of energy and spirited conversation, falls into a stunned silence as the heavyweight champion walks in. Moments later, the silence is broken by a wave of applause, a collective outpouring of admiration and respect. But just as quickly, the applause is stilled by the presence of Officer Walsh. He enters with a swagger, a false bravado that barely hides the bitterness within him. His eyes narrow into slits, locking onto Tyson with a gaze full of contempt. Tyson, having finished his meal, rises from his seat, his presence still commanding the room. As he heads toward the exit, the patrons continue to murmur their farewells, still in awe of the man in their midst. But Walsh, his blood quietly boiling with anger, slips out behind Tyson, determined to confront him. Tyson steps into the warm embrace of the afternoon sunlight, unaware of Walsh's pursuit. But that peace is shattered when Walsh's harsh voice slices through the air like a knife. "Hey, you think you can just walk around here like you own the place? Show me some ID." His tone drips with hatred, each word aimed to provoke. The officer's aggression is unmistakable now, his hands drifting dangerously toward his utility belt. Tyson, sensing the escalating hostility, slowly turns to face Walsh. His expression remains unreadable, calm, yet somehow intense. His voice, steady and composed, cuts through the tension with quiet authority. Tyson's demeanor is deceptively serene, a calm that only serves to highlight the immense physical power he wields. His voice remains steady, his rhythm even, undisturbed by the growing aggression before him. "Is there a problem, officer?" Tyson asks, his tone composed, almost gentle. But that question, posed with such unruffled confidence, only serves to enrage Walsh even further. Walsh's face contorts into a scowl, his posture tightening in preparation for a confrontation. His words fly out like a verbal lash, dripping with hostility. "The problem is you," Walsh spits, his anger boiling over. "What are you doing in this town? You look like trouble." Tyson, his face still a mask of composure, doesn't flinch. His body remains perfectly still, his muscles coiled, ready for whatever may come next. Tyson's muscles are still tense, his arms clenched in Walsh's grip. With a sharp, deliberate movement, he makes another attempt to disengage, his body preparing for the inevitable clash. But Walsh's partner, sensing the storm about to break, steps forward, his voice laced with urgency, trying to defuse the situation. "Come on, Walsh, let him go. There's no need for this." Walsh, his eyes blazing with fury and veins bulging in his neck, ignores his partner completely. His voice grows louder, more belligerent, filled with a primal need to assert his dominance. "Don't walk away from me," Walsh roars, his face contorted with rage as if every word is a challenge. Tyson, his temper now tested to its limits, remains perfectly still. His body is taut, ready. The tension in the air is electric, crackling with the force of what's about to unfold. The tension reaches its breaking point, the air thick with the potential for explosive violence. Tyson turns to face Walsh, his voice a low growl, calm yet filled with undeniable menace. "Let go, officer. You're making a mistake." Before Tyson can react further, in a blur of motion, Walsh pulls back his arm and unleashes a savage right hook aimed directly at Tyson's jaw. A primal howl escapes his lips, the force of the punch fierce and wild. But Tyson, his body forged in the fires of battle, stands unshaken. The blow, while substantial, barely registers on his face. The heavyweight champion remains tall, his expression frozen in a mix of disbelief and calculated fury. Walsh's partner, stunned by the sheer force of his own partner's recklessness, stares in shock, unable to comprehend what's just happened. "Walsh, what the hell are you doing?" his partner murmurs, his voice thick with disbelief. Tyson's eyes lock onto Walsh with the unblinking focus of a predator spotting its prey. His voice, a low, deadly rumble, echoes through the air with the calm menace of a coiled serpent ready to strike. "You shouldn't have done that." The stillness that follows is deafening, the sudden absence of sound making the air thick with anticipation. It's the calm before the storm, the moment when everything is about to change. Walsh's face pales as the realization of his foolishness slowly dawns on him. He falters, his arrogance quickly slipping away in the face of Tyson's quiet fury. "You're in trouble now," Tyson warns, his voice cutting through the tension. The commotion has drawn the attention of passers-by, their whispers and hushed murmurs slowly giving way to a growing throng of curious onlookers, all eyes locked on the confrontation unfolding in front of them. The onlookers, their phones held aloft, begin capturing the escalating confrontation on film. The sounds of passing cars and the rustling leaves in the breeze fade into the background, swallowed by the rising tension. 100 pairs of eyes are fixed on the drama unfolding before them, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. Walsh's partner steps forward, his expression twisted with horror and guilt. His hands are raised, an unspoken plea to defuse the situation, but it's clear that nothing can stop what's about to happen. Tyson's demeanor remains a study in restraint. His muscles are taut, coiled with the energy of a predator, but his fists stay at his sides. His voice, a low, dangerous hiss, cuts through the charged silence, resonating with quiet menace. Tyson's voice is a low, simmering menace. You don't know who you're messing with. Walsh, suddenly realizing the gravity of his actions, stands frozen. His lips part in a silent, stunned gasp as the weight of the situation hits him. He loosens his grip on Tyson's arm, his confidence faltering. Walsh's partner, sensing the danger, steps forward with urgency, his voice strained. "Walsh! Stand down! Stand down now!" But Walsh, his ego bruised by Tyson's lack of reaction and his pride wounded, is consumed by a fiery rage. A wild light flickers in his eyes as he straightens, tossing his partner a glare filled with vicious defiance. Emboldened by the silence of his partner, Walsh steps forward, his jaw clenched tight, his eyes blazing with fury. A feral light flickers in Walsh's eyes as his voice erupts into a roar, a primal, intimidating growl that shakes the very air around them. "Oh, I don't care who you are," Walsh snarls, his words dripping with venom. "You're about to learn some respect." The crowd, tense with apprehension, instinctively begins to shuffle backward. Their eyes are fixed, transfixed on the scene unfolding before them. Some clutch their phones, capturing the moment in shaky vertical frames, while others whisper, their voices laced with fear and disbelief. Seemingly unaware or uncaring of the chaos he's about to unleash, Walsh reaches for his baton. His fingers graze the handle, the action sending a ripple of alarm through the crowd. Suddenly, the air is filled with a chorus of protest. The crowd erupts, their cries echoing through the streets in a cacophony of fear, anger, and disbelief. The crowd's cries of alarm rise in unison, a wave of panic spreading through the onlookers. "No! Don't do it! Stop!" The chorus of voices is enough to freeze Walsh in his tracks, if only for a brief moment. Tyson, his eyes never leaving Walsh, sees the crowd's intervention and raises his hands in a gesture of calm, an attempt at appeasement. His hands remain raised, his posture unshaken. With a cool, detached voice, he speaks words that hold a deadly promise. "Go ahead. Try me." The air is thick with adrenaline and anticipation, as if the world itself is holding its breath. Every eye is locked on the two men, waiting for the next move. Walsh, his pulse racing and his mind frantic, stands torn. His anger surges, but the fear of what might happen next gnaws at him. The moment teeters on the edge of chaos. Walsh's anger builds, but the reality of his own vulnerability begins to set in. Just as the tension reaches its peak, a thunderous rumble of small feet echoes across the pavement, breaking the suffocating silence. The sound cuts through the charged air, drawing both Tyson's and Walsh's attention. Their eyes quickly shift toward the source of the noise, and there, emerging from the crowd, is Jamal. His face is flushed with excitement, his eyes wide with a mixture of concern and awe. He's flanked by a group of his friends from the youth center, their voices shrill with exhilaration, ringing out in unison. Jamal steps forward, his gaze locked on Tyson, the concern in his eyes clear as he speaks. Jamal's voice trembles slightly, his sincerity and admiration clear as he steps forward. "Mr. Tyson, are you okay?" The crowd, momentarily frozen in the tension of the confrontation, seems to awaken from its daze. Eyes now dart back and forth between the young boy and the officers, the energy of the moment shifting. Tyson, an amused glint in his eye, briefly glances at Jamal before turning his attention back to Walsh. A collective realization slowly dawns on the crowd. A ripple of shocked gasps runs through the onlookers, some covering their mouths with their hands, their eyes wide with disbelief. Others whisper frantic questions to one another, their voices low but filled with astonishment. The atmosphere shifts in an instant. What was once a scattered crowd is now unified in consternation, each person standing in shared disbelief. The weight of Tyson's celebrity status and the severity of Walsh's actions resonate through the air, like a thunderclap, filling the space with stunned anticipation. The realization ripples through the crowd, a clarion call of disbelief and wonder. A middle-aged woman at the front, her face etched with concern, speaks up, her voice trembling with the gravity of what she's just come to understand. "That's Mike Tyson. The Mike Tyson. What have you done?" she breathes, her words echoing in the tense silence. The woman's words reverberate through the crowd, amplifying their shock and growing consternation. Walsh, his eyes darting between the crowd and Tyson, struggles to grasp the full weight of the situation. His face, a patchwork of disbelief and simmering rage, reflects his internal turmoil. A flurry of emotions cascades across his features, his once smug expression, the arrogant smirk that had twisted his face just moments ago, crumbles away, like a sandcastle being washed away by the tide of realization. His eyes flicker nervously, darting back and forth, and his hands tremble slightly as the true implications of his actions begin to sink in. Walsh's partner, his expression a mixture of horror and resigned disappointment, steps forward. He reaches for Walsh's arm, his voice low but urgent. "Walsh, we need to go now." News travels fast, especially in an era where every person holds a digital megaphone in their pocket. Within minutes, the news of the altercation spreads like wildfire, drawing reporters and curious onlookers from every direction, converging like a swarm of bees to a ripe, juicy peach. Walsh, now surrounded by a growing crowd and the flashing cameras of the press, tries desperately to regain his composure, his arrogance faltering as the pressure mounts. Walsh, his composure slipping and his denial bordering on desperation, struggles to maintain control. His words ring hollow, his forced calm undermined by the slight quiver in his voice. Bolstered by the presence of his badge, Walsh squares his shoulders, his eyes narrowing into dangerous slits. With a voice thick with menace, he fires off his retort, his words laced with venom. "I don't care who you are. Around here you follow my rules, or you face the consequences." The crowd gasps at Walsh's audacity, their murmurs swelling in volume as their fury rises to a boiling point. The tension in the air grows unbearable. Tyson, his face now set in cold, stony silence, leans in, his towering presence casting a shadow over the officer. Tyson leans in toward Walsh, his towering frame casting a long shadow over the officer. His tone is dark and ominous, sweeping through the gathering like a winter chill. Each word drips with menace, laden with righteous indignation that cuts straight to the bone. "Your rules?" Tyson growls. "You think you can treat people like this because of a badge? Let me show you what real strength looks like." The crowd, once filled with tension, now leans in, their apprehension giving way to an eager anticipation for what's about to unfold. The air crackles with the promise of the confrontation. Walsh's bravado falters, the weight of Tyson's primal fury making him hesitate. His hand tightens on his baton, but his confidence begins to waver. Walsh tightens his grip on his weapon, but Tyson remains still, his muscles tensed and coiled like steel cables. His eyes stay locked on Walsh, his focus unwavering. A predatory grin spreads across his face as his voice carries a dark, almost amused tone, a quiet promise of retribution. "How about we settle this in the ring? Tyson suggests, his voice smooth, but dripping with intent. That's how real men solve their problems. A friendly sparring match. Just you and me. Walsh, caught off guard, hesitates. His eyes dart between Tyson and the growing crowd, his breath heavy with frustration. The challenge lingers in the air, and the makeshift ring hastily set up in a corner of the gym becomes the stage for what's to come. The makeshift arena is filled to capacity, the crowd murmuring and whispering in excited anticipation. A constant buzz hums through the room, the energy palpable, as the crowd braces for what's about to unfold. Walsh, his eyes narrowed in reluctant acceptance, steps into the ring. His movements are jerky and uneasy, betraying his uncertainty. The bell tolls, signaling the start of the match. Fueled by pride, Walsh lunges forward, his fist swinging wildly. But Tyson, quick as lightning, sidesteps the punch with effortless grace. In a blur of motion, his fist connects with a sharp jab to Walsh's ribs. Walsh, the wind knocked out of him, gasps for breath, his body faltering. His movements become sluggish, his confidence crumbling under Tyson's skill. Walsh's movements grow sluggish, each swing more desperate than the last. Tyson circles him with predatory precision, his footwork as fluid and effortless as a dancer. Tyson's expression remains a mask of dark amusement as he dances around Walsh, his jabs landing with alarming accuracy. With each strike, he taunts, his words cutting through the air like a razor's edge. "What's wrong? I thought you were in charge. You don't look like a man in charge." Enraged, Walsh's fury erupts as he throws a haymaker at Tyson's face. But Tyson, quick as ever, slips under the punch with ease. In a seamless motion, his fist drives into Walsh's midsection, and Walsh staggers back, gasping for breath. The crowd's laughter, harsh and mocking, echoes around the ring. Tyson's movements now take on an almost leisurely pace, circling Walsh like a lion toying with its prey. Walsh, his face reddened with both exertion and embarrassment, lunges forward, his swings wild and clumsy. But Tyson, with contemptuous ease, dodges each blow, his movements graceful and effortless. Each punch Tyson lands on Walsh's abs has a sickening, meaty thud, the force of each blow taking its toll. Finally, Walsh's knees buckle under the relentless onslaught, and he collapses to the canvas with a shuddering thump. Tyson, his gloves still on, stands tall over the defeated Walsh. His face, set in a grim, thoughtful expression, looks down at the fallen officer. Tyson's expression is solemn as the crowd falls into a hush. He raises his hands, a silent request for calm, attempting to quiet the jeering onlookers. His voice, loud yet steady, cuts through the silence. Strength isn't about power. It's about how you use it. You had the chance to do good, to protect and serve. But instead you chose hate. Hate has no place in a man with a badge. I hope you think about that, Officer Walsh. Walsh, his battered face a mask of anguish and defeat, sinks to the floor. His head drops into his hands as the full weight of his actions and the humiliation he has suffered finally settle in. A hint of sympathy flickers in Tyson's gaze as he extends a gloved hand toward Walsh, an olive branch of sorts. Walsh, his eyes darting up, meets Tyson's gaze. Slowly, hesitantly, he reaches out and grasps Tyson's hand, allowing himself to be pulled to his feet. Tyson, his face a portrait of stoicism, draws Walsh into a one-armed embrace. His voice is soft, but carries undeniable conviction. It's never too late to change. Hate is a disease, and it'll eat you from the inside if you let it. I want you to go home, look at yourself in the mirror, and ask yourself what kind of man you want to be. Then, become that man. Become that man. Walsh, his eyes cast down in shame, nods slowly, acknowledging Tyson's words. And so, the story of Mike Tyson and Officer Walsh comes to a close. But the message it carries echoes far beyond the final bell. Walsh, his actions exposed, is held accountable for his abuse of power. His colleagues, once complicit in their silence, now stand behind the town's cries for justice. The town, galvanized by Tyson's example, begins to heal. It rallies behind the call for unity and respect, standing together, regardless of race, creed, or color.